Hey everybody, what's going on? And welcome to Guns N' Roses Central. And I want to do a true story episode about Guns N' Roses, a concert they played at Donington Monsters of Rock Festival in 1988. So because Guns N' Roses are going to be playing the Download Festival, which was formerly known as the Monsters of Rock Festival at Castle Donington, I thought, why not take a look back at what happened in 1988? So it was a pretty amazing concert. So it was being headlined by Iron Maiden. You also had Kiss on the bill, along with David Lee Roth, Megadeth, Guns N' Roses, and a band called Helloween. According to magazine reports at the time, about 107,000 people were to attend the actual concert. So Axl Rose was actually interviewed several times at the Monsters of Rock Festival. Here's some footage from those interviews.
Do you regard yourselves as similar in any ways to any of the other bands on the bill, or do you think
Maybe only in attitude in some of them. I mean, Ross done all kinds of material. I like Kiss in their early days. I think the only thing that we have in common with Kiss now is that, they like to make money and they like girls, but as far as their music go, basically their music's like second fiddle to their other desires. Our music comes first.
Have you got anything in common with Iron Maiden?
I hope not.
Why?
I don't know, they're nice guys, but, it's like political organizations, your band's like a political thing, and your music or your album's kind of like your political stance. Well, theirs is completely different than ours, and I think theirs doesn't have anything to do with rock and roll as far as I'm concerned. We're a rock and roll band. Yeah, what they do is what they do. I don't know what it is, and I hope to never be like that. Hope it's not catchy.
Izzy, were you going to say something there?
No.
No.
Crazy places, but never a tour bus. This is new. Many thanks to Axl from Guns N' Roses. How you doing?
How you doing?
I'm doing great.
Just worn his kneecaps out. Worn his kneecaps out on stage.
My knees are history.
Knees are history.
Knees are history.
How's it gone today?
Today's gone great. I had one of the best times of my life. Coming in here thinking it would be one of the worst times of my life. Because I heard some of my horror stories about Donington. It was pitiful.
Well, it was an hard job for you, and you've won a lot of fans, would you say?
I don't know if we won a lot of fans or not, because they knew the words to the song. I mean, they sang so many of our songs that, it was amazing. And I was really surprised at the crowd response. I was like going, wow, if every one of these people would have bought a record, we'd be even doing better.
Yeah, but you're not doing bad with your first album, let's be right.
No, we're not doing bad at all.
Well, we played around the country and play your albums, and you guys over the last 12 months have really took off in the UK. People's really tipping you as like the next type of Aerosmith rock and roll band. Just get up there and enjoy yourselves. Is that the way you guys want to be? Just look, this is rock and roll, get up there and let's party?
Yeah, people try to classify our music and try to get us to classify it. Our easiest answer is it's rock and roll or it's hard rock. But, basically, it's starting to develop that basically we just say, well, our music is whatever type of song we choose to play at the moment.
Yeah.
So, and it's like, because I watch the crowd, and I watch the crowd for the other bands, and like, some of the metal bands, the crowd just kind of moves their fists and like this. With us, we had them dancing, we had them bouncing, we had them slamming, we had them clapping, different songs, they did different things. We are going to do a tour of Europe on the next record, and probably before we do an American tour. And we were hoping to tour with Metallica, this fall, but we feel that it would take too much time before we get another album out. So, but we're not going to be one of these bands that goes, we'll only play America, but screw that, and we'll be back.
Great, that's a nice
Okay
statement.
then, thanks
Cheers,
a lot.
Axl.
All the best with the Guns N' Roses, rocking Donington.
So the afternoon that Guns N' Roses are set to play Donington, they take the stage, and it was an open-air venue with a crowd with the likes of the guys they'd never seen before. The last time Guns was in England, they were pretty much virtual unknowns, so they were shocked at the surge of people who rushed the stage as soon as their set began. People began falling in the mud and getting trampled as the crowd continued to push forward. It's important to note that the weather was not very good that day, and it was quite muddy as well. So Axel stopped the show 3 times, telling the crowd to get back and to allow security personnel to help those who had fallen. He tried to mellow the audience by playing slower songs. At the end of Guns N' Roses' set, Axel, exhausted and exasperated, told the crowd, "Don't effing kill yourselves," which was pretty haunting when news of the actual fan's death happened a couple hours later. So the guys in the band had no idea and wouldn't find out for several hours that 2 fans had been crushed to death in the mud. The band was devastated. For as rough and as rowdy as they were, they never ever wanted anybody to get hurt at one of their shows. So as soon as the news of the tragedy was released, the media outlets in the UK seemed to give a nod as if to say, "We knew these guys were up to no good," referring to Guns N' Roses. The tragedy at Donington haunted the guys for years, both personally and as a band, and the media stopped just short of accusing them of murdering the 2 young men. The real blame at the end of the day seemed to lie with the venue and the security personnel. They should have taken more measures to prevent people sinking into the thick mud. It had been raining for days, and it was no secret the ground was a mess. And they could have cordoned off the worst areas, and the biggest factor that probably led to the 2 deaths is that they should have never allowed a crowd that size to have actually attended the actual venue. Fortunately, they did learn their lesson, and the entire crowd control policies were rewritten and implemented around the country. It came at a gruesome price though, and the black cloud that dogged guns wherever they went. So about a month after the events at Donington had happened, Axel was interviewed by Rolling Stone, and he talked a bit about what had happened at Donington the month earlier. He said, "I don't really know what to think about it. I don't want anybody to get hurt. We want the exact opposite," followed by more author commentary and resuming with, "Well, we didn't tell people to smash each other. We didn't tell people drink so much alcohol that you can't stand up. I don't feel responsible in those ways." So there is some bootleg footage of the concert at Donington. You can go check it out on YouTube. So in 2010, former Guns N' Roses drummer Steven Adler talked about his nightmares about the day 2 fans died at Donington. He revealed how the death of 2 fans at a Midlands festival has haunted him like a waking nightmare for more than 20 years. He said, "In the middle of the afternoon, we hit the stage," recalls Adler in his new biography, My Appetite for Destruction. "It was a madhouse. Over 100,000 kids were crammed against the front. The racetrack was selling the big 32-ounce beers. The kids were drinking and weren't about to go through a whole crowd just to urinate in a stall, so they used the bottles. We saw what looked like a swarm of giant locusts flying through the air. There were actually hundreds of these plastic bottles of urine soared over the crowd. People were getting hit in the head and splattered with pee, but it wasn't going to change anything. We had been spit on and had bottles of booze and beer thrown at us before." Even so, Adler admits he was taken aback by the size of the crowd, even though bigger acts on the bill include Iron Maiden, Kiss, and David Lee Roth. "I was surprised to see so many Guns N' Roses banners waving in the crowd," says Adler. "By the time we went on, there must have been 120,000 people screaming and jumping up and down. It was a really impressive sight for us all. Everyone was so out of control that we had to stop the show several times because people kept rushing the stage." Axel asked the crowd to settle down and back up. What the band didn't know as the crowd surged forward is that 30 fans were trampled underfoot, and security men battled through the crush to reach what they later described as piles of bodies. So recalls Adler, "People were getting crushed at the front of the stage, but it wasn't until the next day after we flew Concorde back to the US that we were told that 2 kids were killed during our set. They were trampled to death. I was shell-shocked, numb. I couldn't believe it." The media blamed the band, fueling our notorious bad boy image, and we were just starting to get a broader, more friendly public image going when this happened. "I called my mom and told her about this terrible tragedy, and I immediately felt some solace as I soon shared this horrible news with her. She was shocked, but was compassionate, explaining that I wasn't to blame. She reasoned that the promoters have to control the numbers and the way the gig is set up. I understood it, but it didn't make me feel a whole lot better." Now, Slash also talked about the events at Donington in his book. He said, "We shot half of our 3rd video during our tour with Aerosmith. The live footage seen in Paradise City was captured in 2 locations. The first was Giant Stadium in New Jersey, and the second was at the Monsters of Rock Festival at Castle Donington in the English Midlands a month later on August 20th, 1988. By the time we got to Donington, Sweet Child and Welcome to the Jungle had charted around the world, and our album had broken the top 10. At that show, we experienced a frenzied reaction like nothing we'd seen before. The festival broke attendance records that year, surpassing the 100,000 mark. This couldn't have been a better place for us to record live footage, except for the fact that 2 people were trampled to death at the front of the stage during our set. The audience was crazy. Just the sea of surging people. Axel stopped the set a number of times in an effort to control the crowd, but there was no calming them down. We had no idea that anyone was actually hurt, let alone killed. After we'd done the gig, we were celebrating in a nearby pub. Al and Niven came in completely distraught and gave us the news. It was horrible. None of us knew what to do. Something that had been cause for celebration a moment before it became a tragedy. It was the first of many strange, surreal, and contradictory times." So in 1995, Mike Upton published a paper about the incident at the Donington Monsters of Rock Festival in 1988. Now, Mike Upton was the head of security at the Monsters of Rock Festival in 1988, and his paper talked about the events that had happened, some of the misconceptions, and came up with recommendations that should be carried forward at future rock festivals. So if you guys want to read his entire paper, I've linked to it down below, but some of the takeaways that I had never previously read before is that some media outlets had originally reported that singer David Lee Roth was on stage when the two fans were killed, when in fact it was Guns N' Roses. So according to the paper, an inquest into the two deaths at Donington was held in February of 1989. After 4 days of listening to testimony from more than 30 people that were involved in the incident, the verdict reached was accidental death, and the coroner praised the efforts by the pit team by saying their efforts undoubtedly saved lives. It was recommended the following measures be taken to prevent a similar disaster. Muddy conditions should be made less hazardous. A person should be positioned on the stage to have overall control of safety, and the giant stage should be moved so that it is not at the foot of a slope. So during Megadeth's set the same day, Axl and Lars Ulrich of Metallica would actually join Megadeth on stage and do backing vocals for the song Anarchy in the UK. So I've linked to the actual audio clip of it down below in the description box. Well, that does it for this episode of Guns N' Roses True Story. I'm curious to see if Guns N' Roses are going to at all address what happened in 1988 at their upcoming show this summer. Let me know your thoughts down below and whether you're attending. And be sure to subscribe if you love Guns N' Roses as much as I do. Take care.